She put her key in the lock. It didn't turn. Not because it was broken, because it wasn't her lock anymore. She'd spent 2 months in a hospital bed fighting for her life. When she finally came home, even the front door had changed. Stay with me, because by the end of this story, you'll know who did this and why it's one of the coldest betrayals you'll ever hear. Welcome back to Tales by Laju. If you're new here, every week I bring you powerful stories that make you stop, think, and sometimes see life a little differently. Today's story is one that stayed with me long after I finished writing it. It's about trust, family, and what happens when the people you love makes decisions that they're never supposed to make. As you watch, I want you to think about one question. How far should family be allowed to go before love is never enough? If you enjoy stories with unexpected twists and meaningful endings, make sure you subscribe. Now, let's get into today's story. The locks were changed, but nobody told her. Isabella Ufford stood on her own porch in the late afternoon heat of Duluth, Georgia, holding a hospital discharge bag in one hand and gripping her cane with the other. Her key slid into the lock, turned halfway and stopped. She tried again. Nothing. She looked up at the door and realized, for the first time, that it wasn't the door she remembered. It used to be blue, a soft, faded blue that Nico had painted with his own hands one summer, humming to himself the whole afternoon. Now it was red, a deep glossy red, like something out of a magazine. She knocked. A woman she had never seen in her life opened the door, a toddler balanced on her hip, wisps of hair falling loose from a bun. "Can I help you?" the woman asked, polite but cautious, the way people are when a stranger shows up at their door unannounced. "I live here," Isabella said. Her voice came out smaller than she meant it to. "This is my house." The woman's face shifted, confusion sliding into something closer to pity. "I think you might have the wrong address, ma'am." Isabella looked past her, past the woman's shoulder, into the living room, the room she had vacuumed 1,000 times, dusted 1,000 times, decorated for 30 Christmases in a row. Nico's recliner was gone. The upright piano her daughter used to practice on, badly, every evening after school, was gone. In its place sat a grey sectional couch, brand new, still smelling faintly of a furniture store showroom even from the porch. "This is 4419 Berkeley Lake Road," Isabella said, slower now, like she was trying to convince herself as much as the woman in front of her. "I have lived here for 31 years. A man appeared behind his wife, car keys jangling in his hand, his expression hardening the moment he registered the scene. "Ma'am, we bought this house 2 months ago. Closed on it fair and square, papers signed, everything done through a title company. I don't know what's going on here, but I need you to step back from the door." 2 months. Isabella had been in the hospital for almost exactly 2 months. First the stroke, sudden and violent, dropping her to the kitchen floor on a Tuesday morning while she was boiling water for tea. Then pneumonia, weeks later, filling her lungs like wet cement. Then, just when the doctors said she might finally go home, a second stroke, smaller but crueler, stealing the strength out of her left hand so that even holding a fork became a small, humiliating battle. She remembered waking up in the rehabilitation center in Lawrenceville, disoriented, tubes taped to the back of her hand, and her son Harry leaning over her bed saying, "Don't worry about anything, Mama. Just focus on getting better. We've got everything handled." She remembered Connor visiting on Sundays, quiet as always, bringing grapes she couldn't chew with her weakened jaw, setting them on the tray table anyway, like an offering. She remembered Giovanna painting her nails a soft, gentle pink one afternoon, laughing softly, saying, "Grey polish makes you look like you're already halfway in a casket. Mama, we can't have that." Not one of them had mentioned the house. Not once. In 2 months of hospital visits and phone calls and forced smiles, had any of her 3 children said a single word about Berkeley Lake Road. "Please, Isabella said now, and her voice cracked in a way she despised, a crack that made her feel every one of her 73 years all at once. Please, just tell me who sold you this house. Something in the man's expression softened, just slightly. He glanced at his wife, then back at Isabella, seeming to notice for the first time the hospital band still looped loosely around her wrist. A woman named Isabella Ufford handled the sale, said she had power of attorney, that it was her mother's estate being settled. Our lawyer reviewed everything, all the paperwork checked out clean. Estate. The word landed in Isabella's chest like a stone dropped into still water. Estate. As if she were already dead and buried, as if her life had already been divided up, folded neatly, and filed away while she was still breathing, still fighting her way back to herself, one trembling step at a time, in a rehabilitation center 40 minutes from this very porch. She didn't remember deciding to walk. She only remembered finding herself 3 blocks away, sitting on a bench outside the CVS on Beaufort Highway, her hospital discharge bag still clutched in her lap, her phone in her hand showing 8% battery. Her legs ached from the walk, still weak from weeks of physical therapy, and her left hand trembled slightly against her knee, the way it had ever since the second stroke. She called Harry first. He was the oldest. He was the one who always had answers, the one who spoke first at Thanksgiving, the one Nico used to call my little foreman, because even as a boy he liked telling people where to stand and what to do. If anyone would explain this, it would be Harry. He picked up on the 4th ring, his voice bright, almost cheerful. Mama, hey, are you back from rehab already? I was gonna come get you Friday. I just had a few things to wrap up first. Harry? Isabella's voice came out flat, drained of everything except the effort it took to keep from screaming. Where is my house? Silence. It was the kind of silence that answers a question before a single word is spoken. Isabella had heard that silence before, decades ago, when she'd asked 12-year-old Harry if he'd taken money out of her purse. She recognized it instantly. Even now, even over the phone, even after everything. Mama, listen, let's not do this over the phone, okay? Let me come see you. Let me explain everything in person. Where is my house? Another pause, shorter this time, the sound of him exhaling slowly, like a man bracing himself. We sold it, Harry said finally. Me and Connor and Gigi, we talked it over, and Mama, you were in that hospital for 2 months, then rehab on top of that. The doctors weren't even sure, in the beginning, if you'd come back the same. They said you might need assisted living after, long term, and the house was just sitting there, costing money every single month. Property taxes, insurance, the lawn service. We thought we were helping you. You thought you were helping me, Isabella repeated, each word its own small, cold stone. We split the money 3 ways, but it's still yours too, Mama. We were gonna give you a cut. We just needed to sort a few things out first, get everything settled with the buyers, and then we were gonna sit down with you and explain the whole, where are my things? Isabella cut him off, her voice rising now, cracking open like something long sealed finally splitting apart. My photographs, Harry, my wedding pictures, your father's watch, his Bible with his mother's handwriting still in the margins, where are they? It's all in the storage unit, Mama. I promise you, we didn't throw anything away. We packed it all up careful, every single box labeled Elue Ned. The storage unit, Isabella said quietly. You put 31 years of my life in a storage unit. Mama. She hung up before he could say another word. She sat there on that bench a long time, the CVS pharmacy sign glowing faintly against the darkening sky, cars passing on Beaufort Highway, ordinary people living ordinary evenings, none of them knowing that a woman sat among them whose entire world had just been folded up and sold while she lay fighting for her life 40 minutes away. She thought of her wedding day, 24 years old in a borrowed dress, Nico so nervous his hands shook worse than hers. She thought of the day they signed the papers for that house, 1994. Nico walking through each empty room like it was holy ground, saying, "This is it, Izzy. This is where we build everything." She thought of raising 3 children within those walls, feeding them, bathing them, sitting up nights with fevers and nightmares and broken hearts. And she thought of Nico, 4 years gone now, dying in the upstairs bedroom of that very house, with her hand wrapped around his last breath leaving him in the one room that had held every year of their marriage. Isabella Ufford, 73 years old, sat on a bench outside a CVS pharmacy with a plastic bag full of hospital socks and pamphlets on stroke recovery, and she put her face in her trembling hands, and for the first time since they had buried her husband, she wept. A woman walking her dog nearly passed right by before something made her stop and look twice. Isabella Ufford, is that you? Briar Johnson had lived 2 doors down from the Ufford house for almost 15 years. She was the kind of neighbor who noticed things, who brought soup when somebody caught a cold, who kept spare keys for half the street just in case, who still sent Christmas cards even to people who'd stopped sending them back. She dropped her dog's leash and rushed over, her house shoes slapping against the pavement. "Baby, what happened to you? You look like you've seen a ghost. Weren't you supposed to be coming home from rehab?" "They sold my house, Briar." Isabella's voice came out hoarse, one thin from crying. "My own children sold my house while I was lying in that hospital bed. Lord have mercy. I saw moving trucks a few weeks back. Isabella, I swear to you I did. But Harry told me you'd decided to downsize after everything with your health. Said you were moving somewhere smaller, easier to manage. I believed him. I had no reason not to believe him." "Nobody believed anything different because nobody asked me," Isabella said. "Nobody asked me a single thing. Come on now, you're staying with me tonight. I'm not leaving you sitting on benches in the dark." The guest room at Briar's house had belonged to her son before he left for college, and it still smelled faintly of the cologne he used to wear in high school. Briar made up the bed with fresh sheets, brought Isabella a plate of smothered chicken and rice, and sat with her at the small kitchen table while she picked at it without much appetite. "You want me to call somebody? A lawyer, maybe?" Briar asked gently. "I don't know what I want," Isabella admitted. "I don't even know what there is to do. They already sold it. It's already done." "Nothing done can't be undone if it was done wrong," Briar said, and something in the plainness of it settled over Isabella like a small, steady hand on her shoulder. That night, lying in a bed that wasn't hers, staring up at a ceiling that wasn't hers, Isabella let her mind drift backward through 31 years, like a woman turning the pages of a photo album that had just been set on fire, watching each memory curl and blacken before she could hold onto it properly. She remembered Harry as a boy, maybe 8 years old, standing at the edge of the driveway directing his younger siblings like a tiny general, already so certain of his own authority. She remembered Connor at 6, hiding behind her skirt whenever anyone raised their voice, always the peacekeeper, always agreeing with whoever spoke last just to keep things calm. She remembered Giovanna as a toddler, crawling into her lap during thunderstorms, small fingers gripping fistfuls of her nightgown, whispering, "Don't let it get me, Mama." She had given those children everything she had. Every year of her life had gone into building something for them to inherit one day, something solid, something that would outlast her. And in the end, they hadn't waited for her to die to take it. They had simply decided, on their own, in a hospital waiting room somewhere, that she already had. The next morning, Isabella woke before sunrise, before Briar had even started the coffee, and sat at the kitchen table with a legal pad she'd found in a junk drawer. At the top of the page, in handwriting still slightly shaky from the stroke, she wrote a single name she remembered from a church bulletin years ago, a lawyer who'd once given a talk on elder law and estate planning after Sunday service, Antonio Brigham. She didn't know yet what she was going to do. But she knew, sitting there in the grey early light of a house that wasn't hers, that she was done being told to simply focus on getting better while everyone else decided what her life was worth. Antonio Brigham's office sat above a dry cleaner's in a small strip mall off Pleasant Hill Road, Nothing fancy, just a wood-paneled waiting room and a receptionist who offered Isabella coffee the moment she walked in, came tappingly against the tile floor. Antonio himself was a heavy-set man in his 50s, reading glasses pushed up into grey hair, with a slow, patient way of talking that made Isabella feel, for the first time in days, like someone was actually listening to her instead of managing her. "Take your time, Mrs. Ufford," he said, sliding a box of tissues across the desk before she'd even asked for one. "Start wherever you need to." She told him everything: the porch, the red door, the strangers living in her house, the phone call with Harry, his voice cracking with excuses. The storage unit holding 31 years of her life in cardboard boxes. When she finished, Antonio sat quietly for a moment, tapping his pen against a legal pad. "Mrs. Ufford, I need to ask you something important, and I need you to think carefully before you answer. Did you ever sign any document giving one of your children legal authority to handle your affairs, a power of attorney, anything like that? Even something you don't fully remember signing?" Isabella's brow furrowed. She thought back through the haze of those hospital weeks, the medications, the exhaustion that made entire days blur together. "There was a paper," she said slowly, "right before my second stroke. Giovanna brought it to me, said it was something for the hospital, so she could talk to my doctors on my behalf if I couldn't speak for myself. My hand was already going numb by then, Mr. Brigham. I could barely hold the pen straight. I signed it because she was my daughter and I trusted her." Antonio wrote that down carefully, his jaw tightening just slightly, the only sign that something about her answer troubled him. "I'm going to need you to get me copies of everything the original did to the house, any sale documents from the closing, and if possible, whatever paperwork the buyer's attorney has on file. I have a feeling, Mrs. Ufford, that once we start pulling all these threads together, they might not line up the way your children are hoping." "You think something's wrong? Beyond the fact that they sold my house without asking me?" "I think," Antonio said carefully, "that families under financial pressure sometimes make decisions in a hurry, and hurried decisions leave paper trails. Sometimes those trails tell a very different story than the one being told out loud." He looked up at her, his expression gentle but serious. "I don't want to give you false hope, but I also don't want you walking out of here thinking there's nothing left to do. There may be more here than a family simply acting selfishly. Let me look into it properly before you decide how you feel." Isabella left his office that afternoon with a strange, unfamiliar feeling pressing against her chest. Not quite hope, not yet, but something close enough to keep her legs moving instead of giving out beneath her. 2 days later, Connor showed up at Briar's front door, a baseball cap crushed nervously between his hands, looking every bit like a boy called into the principal's office rather than a grown man of 41. Isabella almost didn't answer. Some small tired part of her wanted to let him stand out there and feel, even for just a few minutes, what it felt like to be shut out of somewhere he thought he belonged. But he was still her son. Still the boy who used to fall asleep against her shoulder on long car rides to visit his grandmother in Macon, drooling softly onto her sleeve while she pretended not to notice. She opened the door. "Mama, I know you're angry." "Angry isn't the word for it, Connor." He sat down across from her at Briar's kitchen table, refusing the glass of water Briar offered, his hands trembling slightly around nothing at all. "I told Harry this whole thing felt wrong from the start. I told him we should at least wait, talk to you properly before doing anything permanent. But he kept saying the doctors weren't confident you'd come back the same as before. And Gigi went along with whatever he said, and I went along too. That's what I do, Mama. I always just go along." "You always have," Isabella said, lie, watching him carefully now, some instinct telling her there was more coming, something he hadn't yet found the courage to say. He looked down at the table, throat working like he was trying to swallow something too large to fit. "There's something else. Something I probably shouldn't tell you, but I can't keep carrying it around anymore, Mama. It's eating me alive." Her stomach tightened. "What is it, Connor?" "That paper Gigi had you sign, the power of attorney." He finally looked up, his eyes wet, his voice barely above a whisper. I don't think it was real. I think Harry paid someone to backdate it, make it look like you signed it months earlier, before your second stroke, so it wouldn't look like Gigi pushed a paper in front of you while you were already halfway unconscious. I saw the documents open on his laptop before he sent them over to the title company. I saw the date he typed in. I knew it was wrong, and I didn't say a single word. The room went very still. Somewhere behind her, Isabella heard Bryce's sharp intake of breath. Get out, Connor. Mama, please, just let me explain. Get out of this house, Isabella said, her voice low and even now, stripped of all the shaking it had carried for days, replaced with something harder, colder, more certain. And you tell your brother and you tell your sister that Mr. Brigham will be reaching out to all three of you very soon. Antonio Brigham called 4 days later, and something in his voice was different, this time sharper, more focused, carrying an urgency that hadn't been there in his office. Mrs. Ufford, I need you to come in. There's something in these documents you need to see with your own eyes. When Isabella arrived, he had 2 folders spread open across his desk, side by side, like pieces of evidence laid out for a jury. One held the recent sale documents, thick with the buyer's signatures and closing disclosures. The other held something much older, something Isabella hadn't laid eyes on in nearly 3 decades. This is the original deed to your house, Antonio said, sliding it gently across the desk toward her. From 1994. I need you to look closely at the names listed on it. Isabella put on her glasses with a trembling hand and leaned forward. Her breath caught somewhere deep in her chest. Nico Ufford and Isabella Ufford, she read aloud, the letters swimming slightly before her eyes. Joint tenants with right of survivorship. She looked up at Antonio, confused. That's just how we bought it back then. Isn't that normal for married couples? It's completely normal, Antonio said, but here's what most people don't fully understand about what that phrase actually means. Right of survivorship isn't just a formality, Mrs. Ufford. It means that when one owner passes away, the property transfers entirely and automatically to the surviving owner, not to the estate, not to the children, directly to you, the moment your husband died 4 years ago. Isabella stared at him, the meaning still hovering just out of reach, like a word on the tip of her tongue. Which means, Antonio continued, his voice gentle but firm, there was never supposed to be any inheritance process for this house at all. It never passed through probate. It never became part of Nico's estate to be divided among his children. The moment he died, legally, entirely, that house became yours and yours alone. No power of attorney, real or forged, could have given your children the authority to sell it, because a power of attorney only allows someone to act on your behalf. It cannot transfer ownership of property out from under you without your full, informed and voluntary consent to an actual sale. Isabella pressed her hand against her mouth, the weight of it slowly settling over her. And there's more, Antonio said, pulling out a second sheet of paper, his expression darkening. This power of attorney document, the one you believe you signed under pressure in the hospital, is dated 3 days after your second stroke. According to your own medical records, which I obtained with your consent last week, you were listed as non-responsive and under heavy sedation on the exact date this document claims you signed it with a steady hand. The room seemed to tilt slightly around her. In plain terms, Mrs. Ufford, Antonio said, leaning forward, his voice low and careful. Your children didn't simply betray your trust while you were sick. They committed fraud. And that changes absolutely everything for them, and for the innocent family who bought your house, believing every document in front of them was legitimate. The weeks that followed moved like a slow burning fire, catching one thing after another in its path until nothing remained untouched. Antonio filed a formal legal claim disputing the sale, citing the right of survivorship and the falsified date on the power of attorney. The buyer's attorney, once he reviewed the medical timeline Antonio provided, went visibly pale during their phone call and immediately contacted his clients. Nobody involved wanted their names anywhere near a fraud investigation, least of all a young family who had simply wanted a nice house in a good school district. Mama, please, don't do this. Please, we could go to jail over this. Do you understand that? Just let it go, please. We'll figure something out. We'll pay you back every cent. You should have thought about jail, Isabella said, her voice steady, stripped clean of the tremor it had carried for weeks, before you paid a man to forge a dying woman's signature. Giovanna arrived at Briar's door 2 days later, her eyes swollen and red, mascara streaked down toward her jaw. Mama, I didn't want to do it, I swear to you. I didn't. Harry said it was the only way to move fast enough, said he knew a guy who could make everything look clean, said you'd understand once you saw how much money it freed up. Did I ever, in your entire life, Isabella asked quietly, raise you to believe that money was worth more than telling your own mother the truth? Giovanna had no answer. She simply stood there, while Isabella closed the door gently but firmly between them. In the end, it was Connor's confession given formally to Antonio, and later, under advice of his own separate lawyer, to the buyer's attorney and the title company's fraud investigator, that finally unraveled the whole scheme thread by thread. Harry had orchestrated it from the beginning, desperate after losing a large sum of money in a failed investment he'd never told anyone about, not even his wife. He'd convinced Giovanna the house would sit empty and bleeding money for months regardless, convinced Connor it was simply the responsible, practical thing to do for a mother who might never fully recover. Then he'd quietly hired an associate, a man he'd met through a poker game, someone with just enough know-how to be dangerous to draft and backdate the power of attorney, filing the paperwork with the title company while Isabella lay in a hospital bed, fighting to string two words together. The sale was formally reversed within 6 weeks. The young family who had bought the house, once they understood the full weight of what had happened, were more shaken than angry. They agreed to a settlement that returned their closing costs and moving expenses in full, while the house itself reverted completely to Isabella's name, exactly where, legally, it had never actually stopped belonging. Her furniture came out of storage one box at a time, carried in by movers Antonio had arranged, each item unwrapped carefully in the driveway before being brought inside. Nico's recliner, the upright piano, slightly out of tune from months in a climate-controlled unit, photographs in cracked frames. And near the bottom of one box, wrapped in an old towel, Nico's watch and his leather Bible, his mother's handwriting still calling faintly through the margins in fading blue ink, a voice from decades past that had somehow survived everything. Harry was formally charged with fraud and forgery. Though the process was long and the shame of it settled over the family like a fog that never fully lifted, Isabella quietly asked the prosecutor not to pursue the harshest possible sentence, a decision that surprised even Antonio. He's still my son, she told him simply. Justice doesn't mean I have to want him destroyed. Giovanna and Connor cooperated fully with the investigation from the start and avoided the worst of the legal consequences, though nothing between them and their mother healed quickly or easily or without long, painful silences that stretched across holidays and birthdays for longer than any of them expected. Isabella moved back into the house on Berkeley Lake Road on a quiet grey Tuesday afternoon in October, almost exactly 7 months after she'd first stood locked out on her own porch. Briar came over that morning with a thermos of coffee and an armful of picture frames, and together, slowly, the two women walked their way from room to room, hanging photographs back on walls that had briefly belonged to strangers. You gonna forgive them? Briar asked eventually, pausing with a photograph of Isabella and Nico on their wedding day held gently between her hands, the two of them impossibly young, Nico's tie slightly crooked, Isabella laughing at something just out of frame. Isabella took the photograph from her and looked at it a long moment before setting it carefully on its hook above the fireplace. She looked around the living room, slowly Nico's recliner back in its corner. the piano returned to its spot by the window, 31 years of a life quietly rebuilding itself in front of her, piece by piece. "Forgiveness," she said finally, settling herself down into Nico's old chair for the first time since she'd come home. "And forgetting what people have already shown you they're capable of doing, those are two very different things, Briar. I believe I can manage the first one, given enough time. I am not sure, at my age, I will ever quite manage the second." Brian nodded slowly and sat down across from her without another word, and the two of them stayed there together as the afternoon light shifted gold across the floor, filling a house that, after everything, was finally, undeniably hers again. Wow, that was one of those stories that stay with you. It reminds us that trust is one of the most valuable things we can ever give someone. Once it's broken, even forgiveness doesn't always put everything back the way it was. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you think Isabella did the right thing by taking legal action against her own children? Or would you have handled it differently? Let me know in the comments. I read as many as I can, and I always enjoy seeing different perspectives. If this story moved you, please take a moment to like the video. It really helps more people discover the channel. And if you're not already part of the Tales by Laju family, I would love to have you here. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next story. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for spending this time with me. And until next time, take care of yourself and take care of each other.